Hello, this is Colin Walker. I'm an attorney at Fairfield and Woods in Denver, and this is the C-Level Law blog. This is a blog where we talk about employment law as it applies to C-level executives and many employees under many different circumstances. I'm here today with a couple of my friends who are lobbyists, and we're going to talk about what they do in conjunction with workplaces and employment law. So let me just ask them to introduce themselves.
Hi, thank you, Colin. Thanks for allowing us to be here today. My name is Jeff Wiest. I'm one of the principals in Wiest Capital Group, which is a contract lobbying firm here in Denver, Colorado. My background, very briefly, is that I'm a Colorado native, and then spent 10 years back in Washington working for a congressman on the Hill. Very fun job when you're young and single, living in DC, but always wanted to come back to Colorado, and have been now a contract lobbyist at the Denver State Capitol for 25 years. Our firm represents about a dozen different clients, mostly businesses, not entirely, including the cable television industry, the commercial general contractors, utilities, casinos, craft brewers. There's more, but gives you a sample of who we represent at the Capitol.
Okay, Laura?
Thanks, Colin. I'm Laura Long. I'm Jeff's partner at Wiest Capital Group. I was a serial entrepreneur, actually, and just fell in love with the drama and the glamour of standing on marble all day long.
Drama at the Capitol? Really? There is drama at the Capitol, believe it or not. We met each other through the Metro Chamber of Commerce, working mostly on employment law issues, although you two work on many other issues, I'm sure. But let's start with this. Many of us who are watching here, and me before I got to know you guys, didn't have a clear understanding of what lobbyists do. Could you give us just a little bit about that? What is a lobbyist?
Well, Colin, there's only 3 private sector jobs that are outlined in the Constitution. You can be a journalist, you can be a clergy person, member of the clergy, or you can be a lobbyist. We have a First Amendment right to petition our government for a redress of grievances. Okay. So if you're busy running a business and you don't have time to stand there all day petitioning the government for redress of grievances, you hire someone like us to do it for you.
Okay.
So in a nutshell, that's what it is. Jeff?
I just said I spent 10 years in DC, and I can tell you that being a lobbyist in Colorado is really nothing like being a lobbyist in DC and what you imagine a lobbyist in DC is. It's a different league. It's almost not even quite the same sport. We can't even buy a legislator a cup of coffee in Colorado. Yeah. And you have much more opportunity for one-on-one conversations with the legislators who are actually casting the vote. We're in DC, that's very, very difficult to do. Being a lobbyist is a combination of being a lawyer and a salesman, in my mind. You're a bit of a lawyer, you're an advocate. I'm not a lawyer, we're not lawyers. We play one on TV all the time. But you're an advocate for your client, just like your lawyer is in a courtroom. We're just doing it at the Capitol in front of committees or on the floor. And we're there to help pass or kill or amend bills that our clients, as directed by our clients. You're a little bit of a salesman too, though. You're not selling a good or product, but you're selling an idea. You have to build relationships just like a salesman would. You have to be a trusted source of information, just like a salesman does. Another way of looking at it too, a big part of our job is just explaining to legislators and policymakers how the real world works. Legislators are retirees, they're teachers, they're lawyers, they come out of city council. There's no way they can know everything there is to know about the 700 or so bills they have to vote on every year. And so, some of our clients are very technical. Like I said, we represent the commercial general contractors. How you build a hospital, how you build an apartment building is a very complex thing. And when they start making policy that has an impact on how, like just for that one example of an apartment building or hospital gets built, we need to be able to educate them on what the real world impact of those policy choices are going to be.
So your client might hire you to go to the Capitol, talk to the legislatures and their staff about that particular piece of legislation. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, the value of the relationships just really cannot be overstated. Since we have term limits in Colorado, about a quarter of the 100-member legislature turns over every 2 years. So you're constantly having to get in there and build relationships with those people, but more importantly, build trust, because you only have one bridge to them. And if you burn it by being wrong about something, or worse, misleading a legislator on a matter of policy, then it's over and you never get their vote.
So part of the value that you bring is that you know the legislators and their staff, and you know how to communicate with them and how to give them what they need to make good decisions. Is that fair to say?
That's right. Unlike our clients, we can be in the building, in the Capitol, it feels like 24/7. It's not, but during the 120-day session that the legislature is in session, we're there all the time.
Yeah.
And having those conversations, whether it's a quick 30-second conversation in the lobby, whether maybe it's dinner later that night or just a happy hour drink, we're always there, gathering intelligence and helping legislators understand what our clients' issues are.
And I can confirm that in the last couple of years, I too have spent time at the Capitol, but not nearly as much as these folks. They are there literally all the time. And you're always talking to people in the hallways and the balconies, whether they're legislators or other lobbyists or the staff. And let me ask you about that. Do you work with other lobbyists?
Oh, absolutely.
How do you do that?
I mean, information is a currency in the building, so you have to have those relationships to know what's going on. Things move so quickly that it's really easy to get lost in the dust if you're not part of those conversations every day. But then also building coalitions and, if 20 groups are for a certain piece of legislation and only one group is against it, then it's probably going to get passed. But if you can bring other people to the table and identify stakeholders who may not have initially tripped to the bill as having an impact on their industry, then being able to bring those folks into the conversation can sometimes really be a powerful way to kind of flesh out your argument.
Okay, that raises another issue in my mind, and that is, are there different types of lobbyists? I mean, are there some that have a subject matter specialty? Are there some that gravitate more towards Democrats versus Republicans, or liberals versus conservatives? Are there different types of lobbyists?
So there's different types of lobbyists, and that you have to specialize in what level of government you're lobbying at. It's difficult to be a federal lobbyist and a state lobbyist, or be a state lobbyist and be a local government lobbyist. You can, it's just very difficult to do. You really have to specialize. In terms of subject matter expertise, that's something that grows over time. Most lobbyists are not attorneys. A number of them are, and sometimes you'll hire an attorney who can actually just go lobby. But generally that's not the way it works, because they may not have those pre-existing relationships. In terms of partisan makeup, in Washington, D.C., every lobbying shop has a minimum of 4 lobbyists, one for the House Democrats, one for the House Republicans, one for the Senate Republicans, one for the Senate Democrats. Colorado is a small state. We don't have the luxury of that. You have to work across the aisle. You have to be able to talk to both Republicans and Democrats equally. Some people come out of the campaign world, some come out of congressional or other offices like I did, where you have a partisan background. That makes it a little easier, but you still have to be able to talk in a small state like Colorado, both sides of the aisle.
And that's interesting because, those of us that, most of the information we get is from the news networks or newspapers or whatever. You see so much acrimonious behavior between the parties on the federal level. I mean, my sense is there's certainly, it can be some of that on the state level, but it doesn't seem as intense to me in Colorado, at least. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Oh, absolutely. I think that probably every year there's about 700 bills introduced. Maybe, and my numbers could be off here, but this is directionally correct. 80% of them or so may pass, and probably 80% of those have bipartisan support.
Okay.
So they really have to, I mean, it's part of the culture, but it's also, I think the closer you get to home, the more it's really important to solve real world problems for your constituents. And I think that only happens with voices from both sides.
Yeah, well, that's my perception as well from being around the Capitol just a little bit. Let me ask this, if, someone's out there and they've never hired a lobbyist before, but their business has an interest in particular legislation, either for or against, how could you help them with that kind of a problem?
Do you want to take that one?
So, I mean, I've seen you guys at the Capitol, and we've talked about this to a certain extent. You've got these relationships, but on the other hand, someone sitting out there saying, this would really hurt my business, but I don't know where to begin. Should I write to my legislator? Well, that has a certain value, or should I hire someone like Jeff or Laura, or is there something else I should do?
There's kind of 3 levels of engagement.
Yeah.
Once you hire a lobbyist and are committed to really staying on top of things. The level of engagement you're talking about is you belong to a trade association. And they'll send you an alert saying, hey, this bill's been introduced and may pass. Write your legislator, call your legislator, and express our industry's opinion. If you have a pre-existing relationship, just as a neighbor, as a voter, as a constituent, as an occasional contributor, whatever, that can be really effective. But for a lot of industries and a lot of businesses who have a lot more at stake, actually making the investment of having a lobbyist makes a lot of sense. And like I said, there's kind of 3 ways of doing it. One is kind of monitoring, just, I'm going to, engage with you a little bit, pay attention to what's going on that has an impact on hospitals or whatever industry you happen to be in. And let us know if there's a problem, and then we'll talk about engaging. There's other ones where it's just a more ongoing high-level engagement on everything that has a potential impact. And that's really where we live. That's where most lobbyists, I think, engage for, the cable industry, anything having to do with telecom or broadband, or, any industry that's highly regulated or even lightly regulated has to have somebody there all the time monitoring what's going on. Because what happens in the legislature ultimately then ends up before the regulators and then ultimately ends up in court. So if you can affect the policy on the front end, you're going to have a much better outcome on the back end, should you ever get into court, God forbid. And then even just general business employment laws, the number of changes we've seen in Colorado over the last 4 years in employment law, or even 10 years, it's mind-boggling. It's hard to keep up with as a small business. So either engage with your trade association, or a general, a chamber of commerce, volunteer to, serve on their government affairs committee. So that gives you a real good insight as to what's going on. Or if it gets to that level, you directly engage your own lobbyist so we can engage at a higher level for them, right, for you.
Yeah, I think everybody in business either has an attorney or a trade association, or we've gotten referrals even from some CPAs that we work with.
Yeah.
I would say most of them come from attorneys or other lobbyists. So hopefully none of your listeners don't have any nexus to this world, because that means they're almost undoubtedly getting screwed somehow.
Yeah. Well, what's the saying that I love so much? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Exactly.
Right? And that is really true in my experience. I mean, it really helps to be in the room when the legislators are talking about this sort of thing. We've done it together. And I'm not a lobbyist and you're not a lawyer, but we do work hand in glove many times, because it's my job to understand the law. They need to understand the law too, but they're not actually in court like I am, and writing briefs and that kind of thing. So it's a real nice relationship there. But one of the really key points that you touched on, I think, is the being aware of what's going on, because I think most people out there, they don't know what has happened until the law has passed and it's already in effect, and maybe long after it's in effect. And then you're kind of trying to play catch up. And I found just in the last few years, since I've been working with you in the chamber and others, I really feel like I'm a better lawyer because I know what's coming and I can see how it's coming, so I can advise my clients what to expect and how to get ahead of the game. And I mean, my perception is that you're even more on the cutting edge of that than I am, because you're over there all the time talking to folks, and you can really see from long distance what's coming down the pike. Is that true?
I think an example of that is what's in the news right now. I'm not sure when you view this, but right now in the news is the implementation of what's called the retail delivery fee, which was part of a big transportation package in a bill 2 years ago. And part of that, what that bill did was it increased a bunch of fees related to transportation so we can afford to fix our roads, upgrade our bridges, and expand capacity, which we all desperately need. And those fees are now starting to go into effect. And one of them is a fee on every Amazon or other commercial delivery. And it's caught a lot of people unawares. Now, our clients knew about it. They knew it was coming because we'd warned them about it. We had a chance to look at it. We'd had a chance to massage the language a little bit to make sure it was something we could comply with and was, easy to administer. But they knew it was coming. But a lot of businesses, it caught them by surprise on July 1 when that went into effect. We often can't change the policy outcome. If the legislature, especially under single party control, whichever party it is, want to do something, they're going to do it. But we have a lot of luck making it easier to comply with, easy to administer, less costly to comply with, less likely to end up in a lawsuit. We spend a lot of time taking the rough edges off of the kind of the overall policy goals that they're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And my experience is that, you're right. If they really want something to pass, it's probably going to pass. But sometimes you can get some amendments that might make it a little more palatable for your clients and others that are in a similar position. Is that right?
Yeah, sometimes we can outright kill it, even in a unified control situation like we have right now. When we can't, the value of getting those amendments that make it just something that's more workable and realistic is very, very important to our clients. And then there are other times when you have lobbyists and lawyers in the background working miracles that people don't even know about.
Right.
And the harassment bill that you and I worked on this year is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
You came with all of the knowledge. I came with about, the law and where we could go. And I came with an understanding of what was politically feasible. And we ended up backing him into a corner and then getting a bill that was nothing at all what the business community feared and had killed the year before.
Right.
So I would say that was my favorite win of the season.
Well, it was a great experience, and it's just a fascinating place to be. And, most of us can't spend the kind of time over there that Jeff and Laura can, but it does affect us all. And I just can't emphasize how important what goes on over there is. And Jeff and Laura really have the expertise to help us understand it and maybe to do something about it. So we'll close with that, but thank you so much for joining us. We hope to have you here again at Sea Level Law. We hope you found this to be enjoyable and useful. Jeff and Laura, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. And thank you.